We often hear that crypto will change the world, but how is it that crypto is really going to change the world? Well, it allows capabilities to the internet that weren't available before, brings down costs, it provides better, faster, more reliable services. It is the next evolution of the internet, like a caterpillar hatching into a much more beautiful butterfly. Now, our Rainmaker private Patreon members have been asking us to have World Mobile Token join us for an interview. So we reached out to the team and they agreed to join us to share more about their project and share more about what they're doing, which is quite different than most crypto projects. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. If you like money in crypto and you're looking for a seasoned investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do note I'm not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice. I'm just a crypto investor myself. I like to make good, informed decisions. Also note that I do own or plan to own most of what I talk about on this channel, though I specifically don't own any World Mobile Token yet. We want to thank our Patreon members. The private Discord that we have does get you access to a lot more interaction. Now, make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. Let's welcome our guest, Mr. T, joining us from World Mobile Token.
Hey, Rain, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been looking forward to this interview. I've passively been following World Mobile Token for a little bit because I love the Cardano ecosystem and community. But yeah, my Patreon members kept asking, when are you going to have World Mobile Token on? So thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Now, one of the things about the project is the complexity on this one seems high, which is why I wanted to bring you on for an interview. So just kind of break down what it is that World Mobile Token is trying to accomplish. If it's okay with you, I'm going to look at this from the standpoint of a crypto investor. And we won't talk about token price or anything because that puts you in a weird spot. But I'm going to ask the questions from standpoint of a potential investor. Presently, I don't own any World Mobile Token, like I said, but I love to invest in projects where I feel like they have a strong narrative, which is a term that really means like your business plan, as well as an understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. And then I ask myself, do I believe the team can accomplish this? All right. Now, what was the bigger problem you were wanting to solve when you started this project?
Okay, so I came at it from an angle of privacy, first of all. I'd been in the telecommunications at the forefront of the industry for 18 years, and I'd watched and witnessed and seen parts that I didn't particularly like. And I moved out of wholesale into retail, made quite a successful application that ended up exiting. And then I thought, what am I going to do now? I know. I'm tired of the big tech companies and the telcos knowing exactly where we are, what we do, what we eat, who our friends are, who our contact list friends are, where we go, where we bank, which applications we have. I'm going to make a privacy solution. So I started making something that would apply globally for privacy in telecoms. And then I put my head together and I thought, hold on, who's going to adopt this? One of having a good business model and a good idea is one thing, but then actually adoption is another thing. Mm-hmm. So I started to look at where connectivity was the least in the world. And I could see all of a sudden there were 3.5, 3.7, 3.8 billion people unconnected. So I thought, right, if I can start from the beginning here and I can embed a privacy solution as well as find those people that needed the service, I'm okay. So I started to do some desktop research, saw that Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and other big companies were after connecting the unconnected for other reasons, carnivorous in some ways, and to grow their own business model. Sure, I get that. And I thought, hold on, if these guys and ladies and big companies can do this, then I can probably do this. But then I started to look deeper and I saw that they weren't actually doing it. The numbers weren't going down. The adoption wasn't happening. So I started to look into the tech. I'm in telecoms for a long time myself. I started to reach around the people that I had, the friends that I had, their friends, and said, look, how do we connect these rural areas? So one of the guys that I went to university with, Andrew Soper, who's now a co-founder, I called him up and said, look, can you power up these particular devices with solar power in these really rural areas? He said, yeah, no problems, just give me the specs. So I sent him out some equipment, powered it up, and all of a sudden we had some areas connected. And then I realized that I stood on the shoulder of giants, right? Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and other big tech companies had spent tens of billions of dollars, and they'd been quite open with their research. And that was a very good thing about those companies. Yes, their cause was maybe to get more subscribers, but actually they were being very open. So I believe there were some good people leading that. And the rest was history. I started to realize that we could take off-the-shelf hardware and we could connect the unconnected. And then I started to realize that within my own network of people that I'd built up over 18 years, I had some really clever people. I said, look, what if we do this? And what if we go up high? And what if we use lasers? And what if we use this? And many of them thought I was crazy in the beginning, but the ones that didn't jumped in and said, you know what, I think there's something in this. And we started to build a new model. And that new model today is called a dynamic network, which is a mobile network using aerial assets and ground assets at the same time to connect everybody.
That makes sense. So I recently watched a movie that's out there called Beast, and they're out there in Africa, right? And they go beyond like the main city, which is where there's hard lines running to and everything. But then in the outerlying areas, there's no cell phone connectivity, right? To much of it. So you allow the ability for that connectivity to be built and people to actually profit by putting some hardware out there, right? Which then people could connect to with their cell phones.
Yeah, so the vision is that everybody has access to the hardware to be an Airnode owner, and everybody has access to either their own hardware or somebody else's hardware to be an Airnode operator. So what we've done is we've built a new economic business model, namely a sharing economy. If you think of Airbnb, you think of Uber, they disrupted their relevant industries in a massive way. But telecommunications is the foundation for everybody. So half the world is connected, half the world is not. And we've built a model that actually allows the rest of the world to be connected affordably, right? At practically about 10 to 12 times the cost of existing mobile network operators or legacy telecom systems today.
When you say 10 to 12 times the cost, meaning cost savings, like 10 to 12 times less, or?
For the end user, the cost saving is very difficult because the regulator sets the prices. So they say you can sell gigabytes at a minimum of X and a maximum of Y. When it comes to actually the deployment, we've worked out a way to be able to bring the infrastructure cost down to approximately 12 times less than any legacy rollout right now.
Oh, that's considerable. Now, when I was on the website, let me just share, looking through the website and just researching prior to this, I saw, okay, so you have some different nodes available. So, and you talked about like in the air and also ground nodes. So your ground nodes would be your earth nodes, right?
The earth nodes are distributed core. So we have 1,000 earth node operators at the moment. We don't see that going past that number for quite a long time. It's a lot of compute power. The earth node hosts calls as a service, hosts the distributed database that allows us to analyze and work out where spectrum should work so that we can work with mobile network operators. You all have some kind of Dropbox or iClouds. It also hosts this. It's the computation layer, the heartbeat of the world mobile network. And okay. This is a very important part. But just as important is our air nodes, because air nodes sit on the ground. They're the nodes that provide the connectivity layer. So people walk past an air node and connect with their standard cell phone if they're roaming. If they don't have the ability of SIM card or to connect directly to an air node, they can connect via Wi-Fi rather than via cellular. And the air nodes feed up to this beast up here, the aerostat. So you have an aerostat in the middle, and then you have a particular program of air nodes that go down on the ground. And that's how they work.
Okay. So, and then the Aether nodes connecting the last mile, it talks about right here.
So an Aether node is your legacy telecoms infrastructure that allows all the different telecom protocols to enter into and out of the world mobile network. Each country requires at least one Aether node, maybe sometimes two, depending on the amount of people. And this complies to the different protocols that legacy telecoms has, because otherwise you're just siloed. So you've got to make sure that the people on the world mobile network, although they're better protected, have a better service, and actually able to get connectivity where they weren't before, they still need to communicate with the outside world via legacy protocols.
So this reminds me from about 30 years ago when people were talking about voice over IP technology, right? Because back then everything was like hard lines and you couldn't connect internet through it. And the problem was like packaging the data and being able to send it through. This sounds like kind of the next evolution of that.
Well,
is that a fair description?
So the first ever voice over IP call made on a Nokia phone and an iPhone were made by our chief architect, James Tack. We really believed in voice over IP back then, and many didn't. But then you had 9/11, and 9/11 was the first demonstration of being able to deploy a network and recover communications really quickly. And that was the first instance of a mass deployment of voice over IP coming through a Mexican company. So this is similar in the sense that it's an innovation, and we're at the forefront of this innovation. So what we've actually built here is a mobile network that uses off-the-shelf hardware and proprietary hardware to be able to go boldly where no other telco has ever gone before. The technology that we have goes much further than existing mobile network operators, namely because we're using aerial assets and ground assets. So when I say aerial assets, essentially it's a balloon, named professionally as an aerostat. It's tethered, it floats at 300 meters, and we've developed a payload that covers IoT, that covers your 2G, your 3G, your 4Gs, and your 5Gs. And it's a beamforming network. So from this aerostat, we're able to see very far into the horizon, anywhere between 65 to 85 kilometers, depending on where we are. And that's at 300 meters. We're even going up higher than 300 meters and getting more distance. But with an aerostat and with legacy infrastructure, the cell towers that sit on top of these, the antennas, typically they can't take on so much capacity. So we may be able to see 1 million people or 1.5 million people, and they all ping our aerostat, but you can't take that capacity on. So what you then have to do is have air nodes, as we talked before. They're the ground nodes, and they kind of fill in and take that out the capacity. So if we see 20,000 people in one area, university, let's say, they're all trying to connect to the aerostat, quickly we'll go to find air node operators on the ground, or have them already in our database. They'll go to put up air nodes in strategic places, maintain those air nodes, and that will fill in and bounce around the network and make sure that we've got the capacity to be able to take on that whole lot of people.
That's incredible. So part of where we talked just a few minutes before we came live, and one of the things you said to me is the two focuses is to extend service to those who don't have it, and secondly, kind of upgrade services to those already have, like cell phone coverage. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So the latest numbers coming out of the ITU are around 2.9 billion people unconnected. Personally, I think there's more than that. But this is the biggest opportunity that's presented itself for the last 30, 40 years as a business. Currently, existing mobile network operators evidently cannot reach there, right? Because if they could, they have the money, they have the ability to be able to roll out. They've got the staff, they've got the licenses, they've got everything, but it's just not there. And it's not there because there's a lack of money there, or there's a lack of people there. It's not there because legacy infrastructure just doesn't work. It's not profitable. So that's one. The second thing is, as a human, the fact that every 1 in 2 people on this planet can't speak to each other, can't communicate with each other, we can't share the music, we can't share files, we can't share anything. And we have the audacity to call the internet a global village. It's not, it's a global half village. So it's a very important thing. And then you've got existing customers right now. So let's take the USA for an example. The FCC just fined AT&T a couple of years ago $700 million for not being able to, maybe slightly less, don't quote me, but it's in between 650 and $700 million because they're not able to connect people. Now, the mobile network operators are kind of stuck in a box. They can't profitably connect people. They've got a certain business structure, a certain mandate. So there is a need also for a wholesale version of World Mobile where we put up aerostats and we're able to connect everybody and have kind of these roaming wholesale agreements where AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and other big mobile network operators in the USA can utilize our infrastructure to be able to fulfill their requirements set forth by the FCC. So it's not just a need for rural Africa, as many may imagine, or somewhere in the corners of Egypt. This is a need worldwide. There's 193 countries in the world, and around 170 of them have massive connectivity issues. Where I'm from in the United Kingdom, it's the same. You go to Wales, you go to Cornwall, you go to Falmouth, you go up the road, and you take a left, and all of a sudden, the traditional setups of antennas, they're not pointing at you. You can't reach them. You go to a rural area where there's only 300, 400 people, quite spread out. It's just not profitable. So this is not an exclusive problem for the continent of Africa or for emerging markets. It's just we've got the technology to get to those places much faster than anybody else has, and that's where the real opportunity exists. But in parallel, we're also working with first world countries.
So part of the problem is their costs to reach those are just too high, and that's why they don't make the investment. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, and also the fact that proprietary and off-the-shelf hardware is being based on sticking on a big steel tower and having a big electricity line coming to you, right? So in these rural areas, there's very little infrastructure. So what we've done is we've broken apart many of the elements, reduced the power consumption as much as we possibly can, and run it on solar, for example. So an air node takes many different forms. An air node can be this aerostat here, but it can also be in a village, and it's a pole 3 meters, 4 meters high, has solar power on the top, street lights underneath, because on the equator in East Africa, it gets very dark very quickly. It's 7 o'clock at night, 7:15 at night, every night. And then underneath that is a transponder receiver that speaks to the aerostat, and then also a Wi-Fi unit that allows anyone within a 250, 350 meter range to be able to connect to that. And then underneath that is second life batteries. So with that, you're just creating everything that anybody needs to be able to get online. And you're using very efficient infrastructure and technology and equipment with renewable energy. It's a win-win. So this kind of hasn't been researched because typically those setups are Wi-Fi only. But when you put the aerostat in the sky, at the same time, you bring a full cellular coverage with the Wi-Fi. All of a sudden, when someone leaves that village, they're still roaming. So they're coming, they leave the village, they go to another place. They've still got the overarching signal being spread from the aerostat. So it's just a new take on what's what. We've seen for the last 15 years where people have tried to put up Wi-Fi hotspots, and Wi-Fi alone doesn't work. It's really good for capacity. It's really, for example, Wi-Fi 6 is 9 gigabytes a second, but it's not very good for distance. You know, even making a mesh network to go 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers, every hop degrades, and it's very difficult. So you couple a hybrid network, a cellular network, essentially a massive tower in the sky, without having to build a massive tower or the infrastructure around that, with Wi-Fi hotspot nodes and cellular nodes, and all of a sudden, the cost price comes down much, much, much cheaper.
I can see why people are so excited about World Mobile Token. Could you share with us a little bit more about the team or the founders in the team that are working with you to bring this vision together?
Sure. So I mentioned earlier Andrew Soper and his twin brother Nick Soper. I went to university with those guys. Real good people. Andy went off to Andy and Nick are born in the African continent, in Kenya. But Andy went off to work in the family business in solar when I left university, and he left university. And then we re-met again a few years later to talk about Africa, and then again and again and again, always in touch. And when I had this light bulb moment, I contacted him, and he was the first person. And then I have Alan Omnet. Alan Omnet I've known for many years now, is very credible in the telecommunications industry, good operator, and makes things happen. Then I've got Charles Barnett, who's a family friend, and then became essentially family with me. And I've been working with his dad for many, many years. So these are the core team of kind of a family of co-founders. But then as we decided we were really going to do this, we brought in James Tagg, our chief architect. He was the inventor of the touchscreen telephone that you all use today. We all use on ATMs on your telephone. He was the first person to make a voice over IP call over an iPhone and a Nokia phone. He's run a mobile network in 8 different countries. And then we've got people like Magnus Kelly. Magnus Kelly built up British Telecom's core for OpenReach. And then we've got Charles Njoroge. Charles Njoroge is on our regulations team, heads our regulations team, in fact. And he was the the Director General Regulator of Kenya and also the East African communities. So it's very important to know about regulations when you're a telecom company and know how to approach, know the certain manner that you have to have and which rules you have to oblige by, and someone that can talk. And then we have Mike Nixele, who's formerly the ITU. The list goes on and on. We have some of the greatest people in modern history of the telecommunications and regulations, and they all wanted to join for one reason, right? They didn't want to join because we're going to make a startup and make lots of money and it's going to be fantastic and then we're going to sell it. They joined because they actually believe that we can connect the unconnected. James has been doing this for 20 years previously, and our paths crossed many times. We built very similar companies. I would even say maybe competing. And then when he heard what we were doing, and I heard that he was doing things with drones and flying around in the sky and spreading cellular signal and dynamic networks, it was just brilliant. Hey, James, how you doing? This is what I'm doing now. What do you think? And I think it was a very easy decision for him to join. And many of the people that we have in our senior team, our executive team, and our co-founder teams, they're all one vision, right? Let's connect the unconnected. We do something good, and if it works out as we expect it to work out, we change history and we grow the biggest mobile network in the world. And this is the common theme of World Mobile, right? Alone, it's very difficult. And the Googles, the Facebooks, and Microsofts have kind of shown that. With unlimited money, the mobile network operators, really, they haven't been able to do this. But together, we're unstoppable. And that's what it comes down to at World Mobile, is people being together and making this happen. And it's the right moment. It's the right time. The convergence of technology, timing, mindset, technology, boom, we're here.
What's funny is a lot of times in history, people expected the existing giant businesses to create the new innovation, but it's almost never the case. I mean, if you think about some kids in a garage building out of like a garage and a portable storage unit, creating operating systems for IBM became Microsoft. Why in the world did Microsoft ever happen? Why did IBM not do that? IBM had all the money. Microsoft became bigger than IBM, which was unfathomable, right? And then why did IBM or Microsoft not build Facebook? Why did Microsoft not build Google and allowed a small team to come in with an idea and build something huge? So a lot of people look to the legacy system and say, if it was doable, why do you have a chance? And there's something about having a really, really big boat. They become very hard to navigate. They can't turn. They're not agile at all. Whereas a small team with the right people often has a better chance, even though they don't have near as much funding. They don't have all the regulator connections that, say, Google might have. But a hyper-focused team has always been what changes the world and becomes the next big thing.
I agree with you.
Just something from business school, right? When we looked at that, I was like, wow, that's so crazy. The giants never build the future. The giants are big because of something they already did, but they almost never see into the future and lead that innovation.
I agree with you. I mean, it's also we're in a different distribution model as well now. The world has changed from having these giants. A good friend of mine, Charles Hoskinson, he said something, and I'll kind of quote him here. He said to me, "Look, Micky, how long did it take for 50 million people plus to have a television, a color TV in their house, right?" And it was 70 years. And how long did it take for 50 million people to fly? And it was around 70 years. And how long did it take for 50 million people to join Pokemon Go? It was around 15 days. So it's a way of thinking as well, as much as it is implementing. Now, you can't just think and something happens. You've also got to have the technology, the foundations, the team, the right moment. But everything's possible. And we think here at World Mobile as well, we will form an alliance with as many people as we possibly can to connect the unconnected and grow the biggest mobile network in the world.
That brings up an interesting question. Why did World Mobile Token choose to partner with Cardano and Charles Hoskinson to bring about your vision?
So the story predates to a good friend of mine called James Bowater. Okay. I was talking about blockchain and how I needed to, I mean, we can go into this later on, but how Wi-Fi alone wasn't the answer for 3 billion people that were unconnected, because those same 3 billion people, the majority also don't have identity. So you can get online, but if you can't identify yourself, what can you do? So I was kind of looking around for people, and Charles Barnett introduced me to James. He said, look, this guy really understands blockchain. He's got a lot of connections. He'll know where to go to for the best DID platform and people that are making this, producing this kind of stuff. So I sat with James for a breakfast, and he said to me, look, you've got to meet Charles Hoskinson. He is big on Africa. He's going to be in Edinburgh in November. This was November 2018, I believe. you need to come up. So there was a Plutus Fest. So I jumped on an airplane and I went up with James and we sat with the team. And it was quite exciting to hear what they were doing. So I then went to the pub with the team. They were very open. I was explaining what we were doing, and in walked Charles, cowboy boots and all, and his big leather jacket. And he said to me, "Hey, Micky, how you doing?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Thanks a lot for coming up." I said, "Hey, Charles, thanks a lot for taking some time out." He said to me, "What do you want? What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I know what you want to do. You want to bank the unbanked in emerging markets, but without any disrespect, you can't bank the unbanked unless you connect the unconnected. So I see some kind of synergy here. I see what your team is doing. I see you've got a really good approach in how you're doing this. Maybe you'd like to see what we've already built in Tanzania." So he said, "Sure, I've got a guy called John O'Connor. Hey, John. And I'll send him over to Tanzania as soon as possible." So 2 weeks later, John was in Tanzania. He saw what we'd done at university. He saw us making a telephone call over the blockchain and taking the metadata and then making it completely private, only to be seen by the regulator and the subscriber, not by World Mobile. And he said, "This is mind-blowing. I think what we'd like to do is build a global mobile network operator built on Cardano that spans the world with a massive footprint in Africa." So I said, "Well, that sounds like music to my ears because that's what I want to do." So then the relationship was one of kind of courting each other very, very carefully, because we needed to be sure we were using the right blockchain, had the right people behind us. They needed to be sure that this very little known telecom company that had made these great claims and then proved some of those claims were really going to be able to grow into this giant, into this griffin that could be. And it took around a year and a half before we really settled down and started to say, okay, this is a marriage. And then from there, we slowly started to work with the IO team. We slowly started to work with Cardano Foundation, mostly with the IO team. And it just has evolved to an everyday working with the IO team. They have access to all of our resources as a company. We have access to all of their resources as a company. Charles is an amazing guy. I was in Wyoming with him recently, ready for the USA launch. And we were plotting out some sites and talking about, and also setting up at his ranch, some cellular connectivity with the team. So that's why Cardano. When I looked at it, who else was I going to go with, really? And when I look at it today, at the same time, there are a couple of really good chains out there, right? But nobody has the same drive and passion as the IO team for connecting these emerging markets. And again, it's symbiotic, right? To bank the unbanked, you've got to connect the unconnected. So I think we've become pretty critical to them, and I think that they've become pretty critical to us. So yeah, and I'm very impressed. And I know there's a lot of FUD out there about this and that, and even people still think they don't have smart contracts, and this doesn't work. But it's not about slow and steady, right? Because World Mobile has this opportunity, and other people will also be looking at this opportunity pretty soon. But the first mover is us. And the big mobile network operators, they, as you said, their ship is very hard to turn. Their genetics are something different. Their DNA is something different than ours. And they're going to want to see this working before they jump in. And typically, if you look at their hardware and their infrastructure providers, they don't really want to innovate so much. They just want to be able to provide service. So World Mobile's kind of got this advantageous move where we can do something that nobody else has ever done before. And I've got to be sure that I'm on a chain where the people behind that chain are actually going to keep that chain secure, are going to keep evolving that chain, and not going to lose the vision in a bear market or a bull market, and are going to be going and heading in the right direction. And I still see that with IO. They're super strong, right? Their vision is unwavering, and they know where they want to be. And slowly, we're working with them in nearly every country that we're in, and they're inviting us into every country that they're in. And again, Carlos Vargas, Dynel, John O'Connor, Jerry, they all work with us on a daily basis.
You took a big bet on going on Cardano's blockchain, but Charles's visions always made sense to me. I took a couple years of computer science at the university level, and they tell you that you need to architect out everything before you program a single line of code. But like human beings, I often didn't do that when I was new, and you just kind of start putting things together and getting these ideas. So later I decided to do that, exactly that. And I would draw it out and architect it. And when I did, I had way less bugs. It was a pain because half your time was spent without a single line of code. But the coding goes so much better, so much less errors, and it ends up completing with a better product in the end. So Charles's vision's always made sense to me. I do remember the heat of like 2018, 2019 in the bear market, and people were like, Cardano, they were calling it, and it's never going to happen. But the vision always made sense to me. And the more I heard that FUD, the more I bought Cardano, and it ended up being a really, really good bet. Why? Well, I also like the transparency, right? And I think that's why the Cardano community is so strong. The transparency that Charles Hoskinson gives is, what other project can you think of in the space where the founder comes on of such a major blockchain and does AMAs all the time and tells you exactly what he's doing? I can't think of another project in the whole space that's built a community like that. So what was the month and year when you guys first had that discussion?
2018 November is when we were there. It was very cold in Edinburgh. I remember having to wear the ear covers up there.
And that was very early on when people were saying Cardano was never going to happen. And now, the test net is live, the actual mainnet is live, and we're seeing it's producing better than a lot of what people call would be Cardano killers like Solana. And I do wish Solana all the best and success. And I own some projects on Solana and some other ones, but we're seeing the build fast and break things approach, and we're seeing Charles's approach. And so we're just seeing things.
You have to look at this in a way that there are going to be hurdles, there are going to be delays. You're building a system to serve the world. Ethereum is an incredible innovation. The next best thing from Bitcoin, and took it to the next level. But how do you work in emerging markets with gas fees of $29 and $28 and $42 and $13? You can't, right? It's very difficult. And then you've seen a load of side chains that have been built on that, or layer twos. And okay, some of those are pretty cool. And then who else were you going to go for? Luna? I'm glad we didn't, right? Who else were we going to go for? AVAX? Who Algorand's very cool. Yes. Some funny statements this morning from them, but I won't get into that. But Algorand is super cool. We've played and we're playing with Lightning as well, because I think that's a very cool innovation and invention to Bitcoin. But who else was I going to go with, really? Solana at that time didn't exist. It's had its problems documented. It's as far as we're aware, a lot of it's owned by VC, and it's not really so decentralized in terms of the tokenomics behind that. So there was no real choice other than saying, okay, we're going to reinvent the wheel ourselves, and then it's going to take us 2, 3, 4 years to be able to build a system for the world. Or what's our core mission here? Is our core mission to connect the unconnected? And we've got to kind of focus on that. So in telecoms, one of the things that happens is collaboration, right? You collaborate with every other telco company on roaming agreements, on billing, on all types of services. So for me, it was very natural to say, okay, well, if I can bring in a partner who has a blockchain, who's very strong with that blockchain, their vision is unwavering, of course there's going to be mess ups, of course there's going to be hurdles, of course there's going to be delays. This is normal, it's business, right? This is what happens. But as long as I see their dedication, that they're moving forward and they're doing things formally in the right way, and instead of building something that's built at the end, start building at the beginning and build it right and get it going properly. We've got another 6 months, year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years that World Mobile can wait, and we're already settling on Cardano now, and we're already using DIDs on Cardano now, and we're already working. And who knows? Maybe in the end, World Mobile goes to multiple different chains, but that's Charles's vision, right? The island. If you watch some of his things, he wants everything to not be siloed and everything to be interoperable. But our heart is with Cardano and our core is with Cardano, and we really truly believe that this could be all the FUD in the world. Who cares? With one country connected for World Mobile, it will be the biggest blockchain in the world, right? And that's one country, and that's probably 10% of a country, because there's no other blockchains that really have 3-4 million users, real users. They have bots, they have trading agents, they have machines, they have dead accounts. But with every account that World Mobile makes, it makes a DID for the user, right? So we expect to have 20, 30, 40 million people connected in the next couple of years at least. The aerostats are capable, each one is capable of connecting on the latest stress testing, 250,000 people. The air nodes on the ground themselves are able to connect anywhere between 3,000 to 30,000, 40,000 people. So the need is so high in just Tanzania and Kenya alone, with over 25, 30 million people. If we can reach those, they become de facto users of Cardano and World Mobile. And if that's the case, then this becomes the biggest blockchain in the world.
Great points. While we've been talking, I realized how much of even where I live in other parts of the U.S., Canada region and Mexico are unconnected, right? My brother once took a summer job in Alaska, and he drove the part of that through parts of Canada 2 days with no cell phone service. 2 days. Yep. Crazy. In Canada, right? Canada's not a third world country at all. But 2 days he had no.
It's not exclusive to emerging markets, right? It's just emerging markets are struggling more than non-emerging markets, because at least there's some connectivity somewhere. But
because you lower cost so much, it would be able to infill some of those areas that don't.
Yeah, that's the whole USA approach, right? So you've got the pollens and the heliums, for example. So they're providing kind of a fill-in approach. So you buy a system, you put it up, and then you operate typically on something called CBRS, which was a dynamic spectrum sharing that has been allowed in the USA. Great innovation from the US. But it's not a full cellular coverage service. It's something different. So what you're actually really doing here is you're creating a system, starts in Africa, and then applies to around 170 countries in the world. Right? It's not exclusive to Africa, and it's exclusive to rural areas, right? It's exclusive to, if you look at most of Europe still sits on 3G, right? You go through remote, the cities know they're all 4G, now beginning to become 5G, but you go into slightly remote areas, into peri-urban and semi-urban areas, and all of a sudden you've got 3G. What can you do on 3G, right? And the reason you've got 3G is because legacy infrastructure, again, it just doesn't make sense for the mobile network operators to go out there and do it. But if you put it into a sharing economy, like Helium have, for example, and now they're heading towards 5G, all of a sudden individuals can come and fill in that space. But again, that's a bit part solution. You've got to have the overarching coverage. You've got to be able to provide a full cellular service combined with ground nodes in a sharing economy and aerial assets, and have that run by the people.
That's amazing. So if World Mobile Token does do well, it might, for all the viewers out there, it might infill those areas, and the technology might infill the areas. So your drives no longer go without cell phone coverage. It may be through like crazy mountain areas, but a lot of it will
even there we think we can cover, because 300 meters is a height that we can see 65 to 85 kilometer radius, right? I think my AirNode picture here says 75 kilometer radius. But that's at 300 meters. Once we go to 1,000 meters and we go to 20,000 meters, which is where we're heading, you can now all of a sudden see 650 to 700 kilometer radius. And of course, the capacity is different because you're up higher, so you've got to have a few aerostats and then a load more base stations on the ground. But yeah, if you consider that 30% of the USA is unconnected, that's 30%, not 13, the landmass, and 10% of the population at least are unconnected. That's crazy, right? And you need a solution that's going to be able to profitably connect those areas, because if you don't make it profitable, you've seen it also with Helium recently, right? The IoT, by the way, IoT is something we float from our aerostat as well. But IoT, just there's no market for it. The business isn't there yet. It will be. Give it another 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And if Helium can hold out that long, they'll be doing really, really, really well. But then an addition of 5G onto their network, which isn't actually 5G, it's more like 4G, an addition and pollen as well. This isn't going to solve the major problems. This is just going to fill in certain areas where groups get together and say, okay, I want to fill in this particular area in San Diego or in LA or in some kind of place. You need a full solution for the problem. Otherwise, it's going to take another 15, 20 years to connect the unconnected and to be able to provide people with internet so that they can grab opportunities like you and I can today having this call.
That's amazing. Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Coach K for connecting us up. I appreciate him doing that. Micky, it's been phenomenal talking to you. And now I see why there's so much passion behind your project and by the people I've talked to that are investors in your project. So thank you so much for your time. Yeah, I would love to connect up. You have a team member that's much more on the token side. Maybe we can connect later and I can bring him on another time on the show.
Yep, for sure. That's Zach. And I'm sure he'll be delighted to come on the show. I've got him traveling around the world right now, looking for his whistle. That's an in-house joke, but the community know that joke as well. But yeah, he's a super cool guy, very knowledgeable. He can definitely dig into the token side of things. Of course, finally, thank you, Coach K, for connecting us. You're a legend. Looking forward to seeing you in Thailand soon. And Rain, anytime you want me back on the show, feel free.
It would love to. Thank you so much for joining us, Micky.
All the best. Have a good one.
All right. Now, the crypto market is slow right now, and that's okay. Just know that good decisions made during these pullbacks lead to life-changing ones when the market turns around. I remember this time in the crypto winter last cycle, and all the prices were down. I invested in this project that everybody was fudding on called Cardano, and they were calling it Cardano and all these other things. And oh, it'll never even have its test net. It'll never have its main net. Well, look, I believed in the team and the vision behind it. And that's why getting a feel for the teams out there and their vision, are they strong enough to make it through these downtimes? And then I invest in projects like that. And you know what? Things do turn around and money comes back in the market. In that particular case, from the lows, it did 200x. And that's just so far. I think Cardano has a much brighter future ahead of it still. And so we're in another one of those cycles where all the momentum kind of leaves, a lot of the money leaves, a lot of people get bored and they leave, and that's okay. This is the place to be for people who want to make real life-changing gains over long term, because those that plant their seeds and they nurture them and, you know, they do the investigation on which projects that they believe in, a lot of times that's what sprouts when the rains come again, and they will. And when that happens, your portfolio will flourish. Thanks so much for joining us. For all my regular audience members, you know what this wrap is all about. I wrote the words. These just kind of reiterate the principles in investing that I use in just a fun way.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit right before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. The time is never better, the time like the present. The next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking at this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is bright, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I'll follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.